Hello everyone, after finally getting to cover Himeko Nova, I can officially say she has the most obnoxiously written kit with tons of hidden information which you literally cannot know without gameplay. Thankfully, waiting a week actually paid off. So today, I'm gonna simplify everything and break down her kit, optimal playstyle and rotation, because she also has the most complicated setup in the game. That said, before we get into Himeko, I do want to quickly follow up on my version 1 beta video covering Gilgamesh and Rin. At this point, I'm pretty confident that both units are getting nerfed eventually. There's just simply no way their kits will ever make it out of beta. Starting with Rin, I've done more accurate calcs using Fribbles this time, and we can see that she gigamugs E0 and even E1 Dribby. In my previous video, I didn't realize her crit buff was team-wide. So factoring that in, she goes from great to now the strongest Amber in the game, which I've now set for Astral and also Blade. But this time, it's only for Archer. At the same time, because the crit buff is a flat amount, that means Sparkle can also convert this and thus give Archer an additional 25 crit damage. So, combined with how she allows for around 25% more skills, that's roughly a 70% final damage increase for the current Archer. When looking at MVs, we can see that he's nearly double that of Ashville's including and excluding self buffs. And that Ashville guy's already pretty OP, but this is legit like next year's level of damage. As for Gilgamesh, he's technically fine. He's dealing around 30% of the team's damage with Saber, and by quadrupling Saber's MVs, she finally becomes a tier 0 unit. The issue, however, is with RMC. TLDR, when you pair the three together, instead of tier 0 numbers like I've shown on the screen, we instead get an infinite damage loop at E0, and infinite damage equals not live beta. As for how they'd adjust it, I'm not sure, but I'll have the math ready when the time comes. As for Himeko, if they keep her final kit the same as this video's, I wouldn't be surprised. So with that said, let's get right into it. Himeko Nova is a main DPS focusing on a new attack type called Assist Skills. To enable this, her talent creates a territory that grants allies access to said assist skills. Now, these skills are basically that extra button we can use during boss fights. At E0, we have 1 total charge, and at E2, that increases to 2 total charges. This button also costs an entire turn, but Astral Express members can remedy this via her trays too, where they get an extra action to make up for it. Knowing that, we will always want an Astral Express member to be the one activating the skill, as this assist skill also grants 20 energy, alongside their extra turn. Now, instead of a cooldown like during the weekly boss fights, instead, this charge gets reset after Himeko takes her turn. And this directly connects to her skill, where Himeko casts a self buff lasting for 3 turns. During this time, she 1. Grants 30% team-wide damage bonus, and 2. Refreshes all our assist skill charges. So, because this skill lasts for 3 turns, we can use the other 2 turns to do other stuff. As such, her rotation is skill, assist, then repeat. Looking at her trace 1, it is a bit of a wasted trace, but it allows her to bypass that 1 total assist skill usage, and makes it so she doesn't consume any charges when it's her turn. Ideally, they move this and give her a real talent, but perhaps it's setting a precedent for the future. We'll just have to see. With that in mind, let's go back to the assist skill. Now, these are attacks that scale directly off of Himeko's stats, and when an ally presses the win button, it'll also give Himeko 20% res pen and 50 crit damage for this one attack. So far, pretty simple. Every rotation, Himeko is doing one assist skill, while the ally of her choice will do another. Now, moving on, let's see what pressing the win button actually does. Firstly, it does damage, but I'll cover the scaling in depth later. More importantly though, when an Astral Express member presses that button, Himeko switches between 2 forms. We got Protocol Verdict and Protocol Decimation. The form we get will depend on the member that pressed it. If it's OG Himeko, Evernight, March 7th, or Welt who presses the button, then we'll get Decimation. However, if it's Trailblazer, all 3 Dan Hungs, or Sunday presses it, then we'll get Verdict. Something to note is that when Himeko Nova presses the assist skill on her own turn, it will always be the Verdict version, but she cannot decide her own form. As such, she would always need at least one Astral Express member to operate. Okay, but what exactly do these two forms do? Well, instead of calling it Decimation and Verdict, let's just call it Skill and Ult form. When she's in skill form, all allies will gain 50 crit damage and skills will gain an additional 50%. Now this was nerfed in version 2, but it was made up with the next change. When Himeko enters Verdict or Ult form, she gains 200 ultimate crit damage, which was improved from version 1. However, all of this is technically just a side grid as they moved the power budget from her light cone. So speaking of light cone, her signature originally gave 40% attack, 20% defense ignore, 60% assist skill damage bonus, and 180 ult damage bonus. Yes, this was overloaded as hell, and more than other S5 signatures would give. However, with version 2's change, it's now 75% assist skill and a 90% ult damage respectively. But regardless, it's still very strong. With my calcs, I have her adjust his signature at around a 21% damage increase, accounting for rotations versus the Herta signature. However, we can see that compared to Breakfast, it's actually closer to Herta's light cone than Herta is to Himeko. Now that's pretty crazy, but it actually does make sense. At this point of the game, because our teams and kits have so much buffs, standard stats from these older light cones are just kinda meh now. That 20% defense rate in a team with 88%, meaning we waste 12% defense red, still results in a big portion of that difference. Now, compared to version 1, that light cone was likely a 40 to 50% damage increase, although I've seen some people say 60 to 70%, which whatever the case was, that's insane. I made a pay-to-win light cone video back then, which showed that the most egregious cases were usually hovering around 35%. Meanwhile, version 1 Himeko was likely nearly double that. Version 2's light cone is still in that you should pull tier, but thankfully they moved a good bit of that power into her kit instead. But back to her two forms, each form can trigger up to 2 extra assist skills per 1 Himeko ult. Her ult form requires 2 ally ults to get an extra attack, while her skill form requires 9 enemies to be hit. As you can see, this is where all the confusion began. Are we supposed to go skill damage or ult damage Himeko? Which form is better and which supports are we supposed to use for each form? Well, let's answer the latter question. Which supports can we actually use? Well, looking at Decimation, we can see that it has Welt and also Preservation March. March is technically viable because the sustain slot amps less, so it's less punishing and thus viable. But realistically speaking, it's just Welt for this form. As for Verdict, we have Danheng PT, Sunday, and also Trailblazer, so not bad options. With that in mind, we now have 2 of our playstyles, only Decimation and only Verdict. Now, before and while making this video, I kept seeing people say, just play the skill version as most of her damage came from her skills. But at the same time, I would also see people say to play the ult version because she has better teammates. However, with either playstyle, we'd always be missing a good chunk of her kit. Missing 200 crit damage for her ult is no joke. And thus, we have playstyle 3, the objectively optimal version, which I legit saw nobody using or talking about. Here, we're gonna use both the skill and ult version at the same time, so we're gonna get the cake and eat it too. This means Himeko's best team will always have one member that's Decimation and one that's Verdict. And when referring back to our list, it's basically Welt plus either Sunday or RMC, or Welt plus Danheng PT. Yes, Welt, regardless of the Eidolons, will be a must because it's vital that we get Himeko's skill form. For my video and what I suggest, it'll be to use Danheng PT, so we can slot in Mortnex's Blade or Tribute in our flex slot. Now this, of course, raises some questions. 1. How the hell are we going to switch back and forth between forms? And 2. What the heck happens to our stacks when we switch, let alone trying to stack? Well, I'll answer all of that later, but for now, let's cover the damage because math is always fun. Starting with the assist skill, there's actually 2 scalings for this. If Himeko uses the skill herself, it has slightly higher motion value at 250Y plus 4 bounces of 40. However, if it's an ally skill, it'll be 200Y plus 3 bounces of 30. TLDR, Himeko's own skills are roughly 30% more than when an ally uses it. Scaling wise, both cases are really solid. For reference, Anox's skill is at 700 while Mortonak's Blades at 912 in AoE. Moving on though, blah blah blah, it got a lot of stupid words plus Trace 3. TLDR for the ult in Trace 3, we shoot 1 big beam, 3 tiny ones, 1 big beam, 3 more tiny ones, and 1 final big beam with some extra bounces. You see, look how simple that was. Anyways, as for the MVs, it's 1700% in 3 target and 2200% in AoE. And that's pretty damn good, albeit it's not at Blade's 3500%, but it's still above average. And so, with all that info, we can now get the damage and optimal rotation, as well as answer how we can switch back and forth between forms. On the screen is the optimal team rotation which I came up with, and honestly, it's just perfect. We start with Welt, who ends up using the assist skill first, thus activating Himeko's skill mode. In the coming 5 allied turns, we need to get 18 hits, which should be pretty easy in this team. During this time, because Himeko gets her turn again, that means our assist skill trigger gets refreshed for our second rotation. That means Dan Heng can use the assist skill right before Himeko's third turn. And this is viable and optimal because switching forms does not reset its progress in either form. This also means that while we're relying on those 18 hits in our skill form, at the same time, we can also save our ally ults until the end of the rotation, when Himeko's back in her ult form, and get our extra assist skill that way. Moving on, because Himeko is now back in her ult form, we get just enough energy to ult while being in verdict form, thus getting that 200 ult crit damage. And after that, we're right back at Welt's turn, who immediately switches to her skill form. So the next 5 assist skills all get that extra 100 crit damage. Yes, because of our perfect speed tune, we can switch back and forth between forms whilst having 100% uptime for Himeko's skill and ult form. I'm telling you guys, I cooked with this one. Now, I'd assume there's a cool RMC or Sunday variant, but I'm pretty damn sure that this is the rotation. Now, there is one issue, and it's likely gonna be with auto battle. If the AI uses the assist skill as soon as possible, that means they wouldn't be alternating between our 2 forms, thus it'll be a damage loss. So if you want to turn off your brain, then Himeko likely isn't the best bet for you. But if you don't mind these specific setups, then you'd be rewarded with a pretty strong Himeko. Speaking of rewards, how rewarding is all this work? Is the restriction even worth it? Well, now that we know the damage rotation, we can get the damage distribution via the MVs, which if we take a look, we can see that the ults are generally dealing around 25 to 30% of the team's damage. The rest is indeed by her assist skills. It's quite similar to Blade where the ult hits really dang hard, but the frequency of the other numbers actually eclipses that one super hard hitting attack. Moving on though, while all these numbers are great and all, what's important is how it compares to the other meta DPSs. Looking at my chart, she has roughly 28% higher MVs than Blade, who I believe is the strongest AoE DPS in the game right now. However, when adjusting for self-buffs, we can see that Blade does pull quite a bit ahead. While Himeko's self-buffs are actually really impressive, Blade matches that while having an additional 30% defense shred and also 50% vulnerability. So yeah, that guy is just really damn OP. But with all that, I can now give you my thoughts on Himeko. Currently, in her optimal team, I'd say she's definitely worthy of tier 0. We got Blade, Welt, and Danheng PT, all of which are monster supports. Now Himeko, in my opinion, has quite a bit of room to grow, in the sense that she's an Astral Express member, so we're bound to get another member eventually that's probably going to be useful for our team. So I believe she's a really solid option at the moment, and will be pretty rewarding to play assuming you have the right setup and team. However, if you just want to auto battle, then you probably should just pick up Asheville and Blade. And yeah, that's the video. I hope y'all enjoyed because it's taken me days of stressing to get this kit in video right. I'm telling y'all, if you go read her actual kit, you're gonna get a brain aneurysm. Now, as for the future, I do plan on covering version 3 if there's anything interesting, and may even stream for version 4 and just answer questions and share my notes or thoughts. Maybe though, just let me know if you guys are interested, because low-key, it'd be pretty sad if I just streamed to myself. But besides that, a like or sub would be awesome, because YouTube will low-key be working me like how Nihilix treats the Verbos. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and peace!